Welcome to Carpool Conversations, where our goal is to equip parents to have meaningful, Christ-centered conversations with their kids. I'm Amy Lowe.
And I'm Marissa Ray, and today we are going to be talking about helping our kids process complicated news.
Complicated news. So what I hear you saying, Marissa, is this is going to be a super exciting, fun podcast. It might not be the most fun, but I can guarantee it's going to be practical and helpful. And as parents, we are on the front line of explaining hard things to our kids. And Marissa, I'm not a counselor, nor do I have a specialized training in anything like this. And I know that in the past, maybe I've done pretty good with this or I've not done the best. It just depends on the situation. But what we're going to do is learn from somebody who is very good at this and is schooled in this to help us. And so tell us, Marissa, who we have on the podcast today.
Yes, I would love to. Today joining us, we have Beth Guckenberger, and I would love to tell everyone a little bit about her. So Beth and her husband, Todd, serve as the co-executive directors of Back2Back Ministries, which is an international organization dedicated to serving orphan and vulnerable children. After graduating from Indiana University, they moved to Monterrey, Mexico, where they lived for 15 years. That season shaped their hearts, their home, and their calling. Between biological, adopted, and foster children, Beth and Todd have raised 11 children. Her firsthand experiences as a missionary, mother, Bible teacher, and nonprofit leader inform every message she delivers. Beth is an author of 16 books, including adult and children's titles. She travels and speaks regularly at conferences, youth gatherings, and church services about reckless faith. So, Beth, we're so excited that you're joining us today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I think this will be a fun conversation.
Okay,
by the
good.
way. So
okay,
listeners
good.
Tuning in.
Yeah.
Art doesn't have to be bad. It can be fun. It can be
love
fun.
that.
So true. Well, Beth, we'd love for you to just kick us off with this first question of telling us a little bit about what you are enjoying most in this season of your parenting journey.
Oh, thanks for asking. So our youngest son is a senior in college. That is our youngest child. And so this summer, I have 2 weddings coming up. 2 sons will be getting married. So this will be our wedding number 6 and 7 in our family. So I feel just excited. They've chosen wonderful women to spend their life with. So I'm enjoying seeing the fruit of some of that investment we made at certain stages in their life. And I'm enjoying watching them make good choices. And when I was parenting them, I just wanted them to grow up and like each other and Jesus and us. And it's been fun to see that happen.
What a blessing. That's so fun. Wow, 2 weddings. That's a big...
Full summer ahead.
Yes.
We do.
Big and exciting. Beth, okay, the title of this podcast is Helping Kids Process Complicated News. So let's start big picture and then we'll kind of work our way down. Tell us why is it important to share with kids about some of the complicated news happening around the world? Because I think often we want to shield them from it. So why do you think it's important to start to share some of that complicated news with kiddos?
Yeah, I don't necessarily think it's important to share with them news happening in faraway places. I do think it's important for them to understand how to receive news that comes to them. So I don't necessarily feel like it's our job to be the initiator, like, hey, this is happening in the Ukraine today, or hey, this is what's happening over on the African continent. But they're going to be receiving information. And sometimes that news, complicated news, can happen in their own little, sports teams and school classrooms and in their own neighborhoods. And so whether we're telling them about hard news that's happening closer to home or hard news that's happening all the way around the world, I think some of the principles are the same. And the idea of how do I receive something that I don't like and I can't control? That's how I describe hard news. Like, I don't like what you're saying and there's nothing I can do about it. So I think that's really probably at the heart of the conversation. And the first thing that I teach kids is that all of our relationships come in 4 categories. They're either people in our house, and the way we process hard news coming from inside our house, like a health diagnosis, or for kids, it could be a pet dying, or it could be a move that's coming, like hard news in our house. hard news on our kind of metaphorical front porch. So those are the people we've chosen to do life with. That might be something happening in their classroom, sports teams, neighborhood, grandparents, like people that aren't in our house, but they're in our life. Then hard news that's happening in the yard, or hard news that's happening in the neighborhood. So house, front porch, yard, and neighborhood. And one of the things that, I have made this up. I'm not positive this is true, but I'm not really sure we were designed to take in information bigger than a village. I think that's probably what we were designed to carry. Mm-hmm. But today, because of technology, we know hard news that's happening in everyone's village, not just our own village. And so I think the first step is just helping children understand how close to home is this, and to make sure we have proportional responses depending on, because social media, it's just messed it all up, and people are getting very emotionally involved in storylines happening way out in their neighborhood, sometimes at the expense of the way that they process information that's happening in their house or their front porch.
Yeah, I love that analogy that you just used of the 4 relationships and, your home, your front porch, your yard, and your neighborhood. I think that's such a cool way for a kid to kind of grasp like news and where is it coming from in your relationships. But you're right, like there's so many big things that happen in the world and we have so much access to it that I agree. Like, I don't think we were meant to process those things. And then our kids who are so young and fully don't know how to process things are being exposed to these really big things, and they're receiving it. And so could you just walk us through maybe like an example of what that looked like for you, like growing up? Like, how did you process with a kid at one point, like hard news that they received, just for an example?
Absolutely. So hard news that's happening in your house or your neighborhood, usually you end up having ideally one-on-one conversations versus like sitting all the kids down to say, hey, we're going to move out of this neighborhood that you've only known, or we had to put our pet down, or whatever the hard news is. And again, hard is a funny little word. It's because what can be hard for one child is different than what can be hard for another. And because you are the foremost expert on your children, this is going to be really hard on this child, or this won't be that hard of news for them. So I think front porch and household news you would tell ideally in a one-on-one setting, whereas news that's about the neighborhood or the yard, like maybe that would be about a natural disaster that's happening in another part of the country that maybe impacts somebody that you've met, or maybe they've seen images on TV, or worse yet, some of the terrible news that's happening in war-torn regions or wherever, that kind of news that can happen in group settings, because what you're doing is teaching your children what your belief system is. Like, wow, that really hard thing is happening, and hard and good can sit right next to each other. So we're not going to pretend that's not hard. We're not going to say, well, I'm sure God's with them, so they're fine. No, that's probably quite terrible to have that, whatever that hard news is. But at the same time, we can say good things, we can say truthful things, and they can sit next to each other. And I think kids are naturally pretty black and white. And so we have to teach them slowly how to have empathy for storylines, especially because of the volume with which they are receiving information these days, much higher volume than when I was a kid. They have much more. We want to teach them to have empathy about things that are hard, so we're going to acknowledge they're hard, and then help them understand, is there an action step we can take? And one action step we can always take is to pray for something that we hear about that's happening really hard and far away. There may be other action steps. It may be that I hear about a school shooting in another state, and that is really hard. And so we might say a few sentences about what that must be like for those families, or whomever we're sympathizing and empathizing with. We might say a prayer for them. But then also think about let's take a minute and talk about if that was going to happen in your school. What might be the first and second and third thing that you would do, or how you can always use it as a little teachable moment. But it brings me to this practice that we did as a family. It got really important to me because of the size of my family, that my children understood how to be empathetic about something that they don't think would be hard for them, but might be hard for someone else. So I think one of the best tools that we can teach kids is storytelling. Storytelling reinforces culture. And so we used our meal tables as opportunities for storytelling practice. So one of the things we did every every day was in our tables, we would say kind of the best thing that happened to them that day and the hardest thing that happened to them that day. And the reason we told each other the best thing that happened in our day, or a moment we didn't want to forget, is because we want to celebrate each other and be happy for someone else's happiness. And even if their happy story has nothing to do with me, I want to be happy for you. I want to learn how to celebrate you. But the other thing is I want to learn how to put myself in your shoes, extend myself towards you, have emotion about a story you're telling that's hard for you, even if you're like thinking to yourself, that's not really that hard. That's happened to me before. Whatever a child's natural response might be, we want to teach them, if that's hard for your brother or that's hard for your sister, then we're going to feel empathy for them, and we're going to offer ourselves to them, or comfort or time or practice or whatever we need to. And I think that little micro skill that you learn at a table can be applied then when you're talking about stories that happen to people that you don't know. You practice it first on those that you do know.
That's amazing. I love that. And I think there was so much in that answer, but I think about the whole idea of all of this coming at our kids, like you said, in a way that we didn't experience growing up. And I think it's so good just for even us to like put those kind of glasses on as we look through this. And we can get so overwhelmed with all of the information coming our way and get anxious and get flustered and get overwhelmed. And so I think, of course, our kids are going to get that way too if they're exposed to all of that we're also exposed to. So, Beth, tell us just practical tips. Let's say I'm not good at this. I don't feel equipped. Just maybe some quick things that you like always go to that you think other people could also grab a hold of practically.
Yep. So, first of all, modeling good behavior. So instead of saying, oh no, there's a hurricane that's devastating the Houston community, like saying, hey, you might have seen this on the news, or do you know that Aunt Jennifer lives in Houston? They are experiencing a weather event that's really hard and it's displacing people. Like, you model, you tell them the facts, you model to them how you're processing. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to collect some things and send it to them. We're going to stop right now and pray for them. Let's call and check on Aunt Jennifer later and see how she's doing and see if there's anything we can do. Hey, you know what? I think we should do a lemonade stand, or what, like, if there's any action step to take, you model for them with confidence. Like, this, something can be happening and it can move us to action. We are not, we don't have to be stunned to inactivity. A lot of anxiety comes from like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to think. I don't know what to say. But modeling to them, like, here's what we're going to do as a family about this news. We're going to check on Aunt Jennifer next week, or whatever your thing is. But two like little hacks really about our brain. So our brains are a little bit more complicated than this, but in the front of our brain, like behind our forehead, we have something called a prefrontal cortex. That's where problem solving is, creative thinking, cause and effect, all the best thinking happens up there in your prefrontal cortex. Behind your ears on each side, you have a little gland called an amygdala, and that's where our fight, flight, freeze, and there's now a fourth one called fawn. That's where that response is housed. And so sometimes when I'm talking to kids, we call that our fear brain. And when something happens, hard news happens, either, again, that will directly impact them or that won't. Some kids, depending on how sensitive they are, depending on if this triggers a previous event in their life, all kinds of factors can happen. But they can go from their prefrontal cortex, where they're thinking, oh, this has nothing to do with me, or I'm going to be fine because my parents are going with me on the move, or whatever. They leave that good part of their brain and they kick back there to their amygdalas. The amygdala and the prefrontal cortex cannot work at the same time, and the amygdala wins every time. So as a parent, if you're giving news to a child and you begin to recognize they're having an anxious response, a fearful response, your job is not to talk to them about all the stuff that we would normally if the front of their brain was online. Your job is to either help them self-regulate or co-regulate them, help them get their emotions under control. Then you get to tell them all the good stuff, but they're not listening to you if their amygdalas are activated. And two very simple ways to reduce the activity in the amygdala and kind of bring your brain back online is through listening. The full attention of an attuned listener heals our brains. And the second one is play. that releases dopamine and serotonin and all the good stuff we want in our brains. So if your child is beginning to have some kind of anxious response or a delayed anxious response, like you told them in the afternoon, we had to put the dog down. They seemed fine. They started to watch a show. But then later that night, they began to have a reaction to, a delayed response to that hard news. Listen and play are like two of like this like little quick hacks I would hand to a parent and say, when you don't know what to do, start there. Mm-hmm. And as you're listening to them, you'll begin to hear either some lies they've absorbed, like maybe I killed the pet, maybe, we'll never have a pet again, whatever, things that they've like recorded that aren't true. And as you talk to them, you're going to hear from them what that information they have and help them re-record it in a way that's truthful. Or play just helps reassure them something hard can be true and something good can still be happening. Mm-hmm. And those would be two like quick little hacks I would share.
Yeah, those are two great hacks that I feel like could help any, like you said, any kid from any age. Like I even think about my toddler and when he is in, not his like best prefrontal cortex space, if I can just sit there and hug him for a minute and like we can breathe together, or if we can just sit and like open a book together and give him a few minutes, then he can like you said, regulate, and then we can have a conversation. So that is so true. And you kind of led us to our next question. You talked about, if you've processed something with a kid, but then you see this delayed response happening, what might be signs that a child is having this delayed response or struggling to process something that you as a parent have maybe thought you've addressed and, talked with them through and they seem to be good, but now, what just might be signs that a parent could notice to see like, oh, wait, maybe my child has not fully processed that or they're struggling to?
I mean, this is not a comprehensive answer, but this is still a complete answer. One of the ways in which children let us know that they're afraid, and even if they can't articulate it, is through anger. Anger in all its forms. Depending on their temperament, they might have a passive form of aggression or an aggressive form of aggression. But anger is a secondary emotion, and it sits on the primary emotion of fear. And that's true for us too. I mean, I remember only one time I lost track of one of my sons in a grocery store. When I finally found him in the produce, I was terrified. I mean, I was literally terrified. I hadn't seen him for several minutes. I didn't know where he was. I did not see him and say, would you like a banana? I mean, I saw him and I lost my mind. Like, what are you doing? I told you they were, I was so scared, but what I sounded like was very angry, but I was just really afraid, And so one of the easy ways that kids put on display they have some unresolved fears or unsatisfied, unalleviated fears is they get angry. And sometimes as a parent, when we see our child angry, I mean, we can do all kinds of things. We can get hotter than them to try to subdue them. That's not very effective. We can try to match their heat. We sometimes run away from our kids when they're angry because it's uncomfortable to us. But if we can just stay present and be a detective and try to figure out what fear is driving this behavior, there's meaning behind this behavior, then we have an opportunity to address what those fears are and watch some of that response begin to dissipate. So again, that's not the only way, not comprehensive, the only way we would know. It can be disrupted sleep. It can be poor eating. It can be lack of engagement in family activities. It can be resistance to go to school. I mean, there's a whole bunch of ways in which kids can show it to you, but that's a pretty easy one and common one to see.
Yeah. Be a detective. I like it. Yeah. Very helpful. Okay, Beth, we are, again, trying to explain these serious things to kids, and we don't want to overwhelm them or frighten them. What tips would you give us to just walk that kind of line of, hey, this is serious, we got to talk to you about this, but not scare them or overwhelm them, because that's what we don't want.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing is always tell the truth. Sometimes we think we protect kids by lying to them, but the truth always comes to light, and you don't want them to ever look back and feel like somebody didn't tell them the truth. Even if the truth is, hey, right now I can't tell you exactly what's happening, but I need to let you know that your brother is not going to be here tonight, or hey, I don't know all the reasons this is happening, but I, like, even if your answer is telling them you can't tell them the truth. Be as clear as possible. Like, when someone dies, don't say they passed away or they went on to a better place. Like, that makes no sense to children. Like, be as clear as possible. Like, I'm so sorry that your grandfather has died, and that means we won't see him again, but here's why we can hold on to hope, or whatever, whatever your messages is, your belief system messages. But don't use flowery language. Like, tell truth, be truthful, and be really clear. And I think also, you model for them, this is how I'm processing this information. This is hard for me that we lost our pet. This is hard for me that there was a school shooting because it scares me. Like, whatever your thing is, like, in age-appropriate developmental ways, model for them how you're processing that. Lots of this behavior is caught, not taught. But here's the other thing I would just challenge about overwhelming or scaring them. A number of years ago, I wrote a book on spiritual warfare, and the number one question I got in the aftermath of that, it was for adults, was how young is it to tell my child about evil and about bad things, or about all the topic of spiritual warfare? And I said, well, they already know about evil because, like, Disney teaches them about evil. Like, they watch any kind of show, there's a good guy and a bad guy. So they already know what it feels like to fall down and get hurt. They actually probably understand more of that than we think that they do. It's not that we have to introduce them to the fact that there are hard things that happen, but we need to introduce them to how you process and carry hard things. What hard things can sit in a parent's hands, what hard things, all the rest of that conversation. But I wouldn't be afraid to overwhelm them. I think lack of information is pretty overwhelming. Clarity is kindness.
Yeah, I love that. I think you're so right. I think our default is to think, okay, we're going to protect our kids. We're not going to let them see what has happened or know what has happened. But that is doing them a disservice. Like you said, one day they may look back and be like, well, mom and dad weren't truthful with me. And so being able to share the truth, but in age appropriate ways, is that just makes sense, that just feels like the best answer. So I love that you shared that. And I know that there are probably parents listening who might be in the season of where they are navigating, like, how do I process this hard thing that has happened with my kid, and what does that look like? And so do you have any encouragement for parents who may be listening now on how to remain hopeful in this season and what that might be looking like for them?
Yeah. So one of the things that's comforting to all of us, not just kids, but is, sometimes we call them life scripts, or even just repeated exercises. So every night before we went to bed, I would ask my children the same couple of questions. They knew what they were. Some of them were, maybe you'd even call them innocuous, like, who's somebody you saw being kind today? What's something that you're grateful for? Where there's no right or wrong answer, they can say, I was grateful for ice cream and I saw you be kind today, whatever. But you're practicing, we debrief our days, and one of those questions can be, what do we know for sure is true? And some of my children entered my family through foster care and adoption, so they have some traumatic histories. And it was really important that we establish some baseline truths in their life. Like, here's some things I know for sure that is true. Some of the things that I wanted them to know for sure were true were about our faith. Some of the things I wanted them to know for sure was about their dad and I and our presence in their life. Some of the things I wanted them to know for sure were true was about them and their identity and where they belong. That I'll leave those answers to the discretion of your listener as the parent. But having those rituals, those practices, what we found is that some of those got shortened over time to like code words or phrases. Again, sometimes you call them life scripts. And I could say that life script or that word or that phrase to my children at a time when we weren't doing that exercise. And it just kind of locked them back into, I know we're going to get a chance to talk about it. I know these things are true. No matter what's happening around me, I have something to stand on. So I think I get sad when I think parents think they have to be really creative and do something different all the time and entertain their kids. Like, no, actually, the same questions every day are actually very anchoring. There's a lot of grounding to that. Yeah.
The importance of routine and rhythms. I love that. Beth, this has been so helpful. If people want to connect with you, where should we send them? What's your website or Instagram or anything like that where they can come learn more?
Sure. They can find me on social media platforms with my first and last name, Beth Guckenberger or B. Guckenberger. I work full-time for an organization called Back2Back Ministries, and we have free trauma training, completely free, that any parent can take that helps teach those things about the brain and about kids.
Amazing.
On a website called Trauma Free World. If they click on that, they can get a chance to look at some of the content we have there that we just make available so that these conversations can happen all around the world.
Wow. Thanks for that work that you do to help equip parents. And thanks for being with us today, Beth. We always end our podcast with a question that parents can take back now that they've soaked in this information. They can take it back to the dinner table or the carpool line to strike up a conversation with their family. And so the question for everybody today to take back is, when you hear something bad in the news or in your world, what questions pop in your head? So we'll see what they say to that question. You can have a good conversation the next time you get together and chat with your family. And we hope that that's helpful. But thank you again, Beth, for being here today. And we are so thankful that you chose to listen today. And we'll see you next time.